So I'm curious about the non-irrigation of the vines. What difference does that make, and how do they keep the vines fresh and without having to water them?
Well, see, irrigation is about money and greed.
Okay.
In the United States, and this is one of the reasons that we don't sell domestic wines, over 99% of vineyards are irrigated. Now, I'll tell you why you irrigate a grapevine in a moment, but it has to do with money. And so grapevines have been growing all over the world for more than 10,000 years in some of the harshest climates known to man, right? As an example, we sell natural wines that are grown on the Italian island of Sicily. Now, if you've ever been to Sicily, you know it's basically just a giant volcano. It's not a very large island. And the conditions there are very hot, very dry, and very rocky, right? And I mean, it's an impossible climate to grow anything, right? It's just super hot, dry, and rocky. And so, you know, grapevines are grown there without irrigation all, you know, throughout history and all over Europe. In fact, across much of Europe, not all, but across much of Europe, it's actually illegal to irrigate a grapevine because Europeans know what we know. Europeans have been making wines for over 3,000 years, right? And so the moment you irrigate a grapevine, you fundamentally change the character and quality of the fruit, consequently the juice, right? And the character of that juice. And so Italy is, I mean, so much of Europe is very protective of irrigation. So here's the thing. When you irrigate a grapevine, the root ball in an irrigated grapevine is about 3 feet in diameter and about 3 or 4 feet deep, where an unirrigated grapevine at maturity can have a root span that can span 30 or 40 feet deep as the vine is struggling and seeking water. You know, these little hair-like capillary roots are breaking apart tiny pieces of mineral and soil in search for nutrient and moisture, right? And so, and it's an undisputed fact in the wine world between growers, natural growers, irrigation, not irrigation, that the more the vine struggles, the higher the quality of fruit it will produce, which is why grapevines are planted close together, right? And so that's part of the struggle from plant to plant. And if you'll look on some, you know, cult or select, you know, expensive wines, they'll say Hillside Select, it was grown on a hill. Well, when it's grown on a hillside, it's more stressed than when it grows on flat land. And so, but here's why you irrigate. When you irrigate, it's cheaper to farm. It's easier to farm. It also produces a higher yield. That's the size of the clusters, right? So it produces a higher yield, and it might not surprise you that when you pump a grapeberry full of water, it weighs more, right? So fruit is sold by the ton. So fruit is sold by weight. And so that's, if it weighs more, it's worth more. So, and in addition to the fact that it's just easier to farm, particularly in the beginning. So you can't take a grapevine, you can't take a mature vine off irrigation. It doesn't have the root structure to support itself. So the only way you can irrigate, the only way you can do dry farming on a vine is to begin it at dry farming. And that's very difficult because basically what you have to do, see, you won't get fruit, you won't get a meaningful harvest fruit until the third leaf or the third year of a new grapevine. Well, what you have to do if you're dry farming is that you plant the vine, but then you have to dig a hole next to it to pour water in it to get the water below the root structure so that you can draw the roots down, right? You can't water it from above, or it will seem like irrigation and the roots won't go down. So you actually have to dig a hole deeper than the vine next to it and pour water in it. And so that water seeps down and draws the roots below. This is very difficult, right? It's very labor intensive. You'll have plants that die in the beginning. And once they get hold, once they establish themselves, then you don't have to do that anymore. But for the first year, you'll have to help the plant along in most environments. Not all, but most. Some colder parts of France where it's just cold and wet, you wouldn't have to do that. But in California, or in Italy or anywhere where it's a warm climate, if you're going to dry farm, you have to teach the plant to seek the water, or it won't survive in the beginning. So it's just, it's just a lot more expensive. And big wine companies are not interested in making wine better or healthier. They're interested in making it faster and cheaper, right?
Right.
So, and most wines are made by just a handful of companies. I mean, the other secret of the wine industry is that 52% of all wines in the US are made by just 3 companies. And the top 30 companies make over 70% of US wines. So when you go in the grocery store or in a bottle shop and you see those shelves and shelves and shelves and rows and rows and rows of bottles, most of those are made by a handful of companies. Now, these multi-billion-dollar marketing conglomerates don't want you to know that. So they hide behind thousands of brands and labels to confuse you, right? To think that, and they'll have a picture of a farmhouse on the label, right? To have you believe that you're drinking from a farmhouse when you're really very likely drinking from massive wine factories located in the Central Valley of California.